At Devil's Pass, the geographical logic we rely on simply evaporates. Standard magnetic compasses lose their orientation entirely, spinning without a clear pole, while GPS signals disappear as if the satellites themselves were blocked by an invisible ceiling. Step onto this trail, and the background radiation of the natural world goes quiet. There is no wind in the pines, no insect activity in the brush, and no sound of water from the nearby peaks. It is a sterile, heavy silence. Most wilderness predators rely on the mechanics of the ambush, the sudden burst of speed or the crushing bite. But the presence in these mountains operates on a different biological imperative, prioritizing psychological bait over physical pursuit. This shift in strategy creates a unique danger. You aren't being hunted in the traditional sense. You are being invited to leave the safety of the trail. This 1980s Polaroid captures the last moments of a 6-person hiking party. Only one returned. The survivor never spoke of what happened in the pass. He simply stopped using words altogether, communicating only through a rhythmic, melodic whistle. Local lore has since hardened into a single survival rule. If you hear someone whistling a familiar song from the trees, do not acknowledge it and never follow the sound. For Ethan, Maya, Lucas, and Claire, this warning felt like local color. They were experienced, well-equipped, and skeptical of anything that couldn't be explained by a weather map or a biology textbook. As they moved deeper into the pass, the environment began a systematic dismantling of their group cohesion and sensory processing. By the time they realized the mountain's folklore was a set of technical instructions for survival, the first mechanism of the encounter was already in motion. The isolation began with the digital. Their phones and emergency beacons quickly became completely dead weight, leaving them with no link to the world beyond the tree line. This readout represents the auditory void of the pass. As ambient forest noise flatlines, the brain struggles with the lack of external stimuli. In this sensory deprivation, the mind hyperfixates, aggressively seeking any sound that breaks the vacuum, no matter how small. This forced silence is the preparatory stage. It softens the target's mental defenses, creating an urgent psychological need for a familiar voice or a recognizable noise. Then the silence broke. A soft, clear whistle drifted through the pines. It was a melody that felt deeply personal, carrying a sense of safety and warmth that seemed to push back the oppressive cold of the mountains. The entity doesn't just mimic a sound, it seems to access the specific nostalgic architecture of its targets, tailoring the lure to the individual's history. While they stood together, they experienced 4 different realities: Ethan's father humming, Claire's grandmother, Lucas's fight song, and Maya's mother's piano. Because the timing was synchronized, they assumed the sound was objective, a shared conviction masking a highly individualized psychological hook. By mirroring a victim's own internal history, the predator remains invisible. It hides behind the victim's own memories, using their past to mask the reality of the present. Then came the physical cues. Fresh boot prints appeared in the mud, leading away from the trail and toward the thickest part of the forest, prints that matched no one in the group. Objects begin to move with an impossible calculated intent. A pine cone rolls across the path, not scattered by wind, but directed to draw the eye away from the established trail and toward the deep brush. At this critical stage, the auditory lure begins to override conscious decision-making. The brain's motor centers react to the melody before the frontal lobe can process the danger. Lucas was the very first to succumb. Without a word of explanation or a look back at his friends, he began walking into the woods. His walking gait was perfectly steady and rhythmic, exactly as if he were following a hidden metronome only he could hear. The success of the trap lies in this transition from mental suggestion to physical reflex. The hiker isn't being pulled into the trees, they are simply walking, their own legs carrying them toward their disappearance. Maya broke the spell by sheer physical force, grabbing Lucas and dragging him back toward the trail, just as the shadows of the pines seemed to close in around him. Panic finally set in as they realized the music they were chasing was a fabrication. They turned and fled, abandoning their gear and running toward the lower altitudes. The mountain responded. As they reached the edge of the pass, the whistling stopped and was replaced by a voice. It was Ethan's own name, spoken with the exact cadence and warmth of his father, heard only by him. This predator is not a static trap. When a simple lure fails, it demonstrates a terrifying capacity to learn and refine its approach in real time, escalating the intimacy of the attack to pull its target back. In Devil's Pass, the danger isn't found in what we fear, but in what we love. It is a system designed to weaponize comfort, turning a victim's most cherished memories and familial bonds into the very tools of their destruction. This environment operates on a simple, chilling logic. It doesn't need to hunt you down in the dark. It simply waits for you to hear a familiar song and walk there yourself.